Hello and welcome to a new series of videos that I will be creating for the channel, Great Game Intros. These will be showcases and looks at what I believe to be the all-time great introductory cutscenes, animations, and the like in gaming. The best intros are not only strong in terms of cinematography, but also effectively communicate the world and atmosphere that the game takes place in, highlighting characters, gameplay mechanics, and art and music. The best of the best can communicate these concepts free of any context or prerequisite information about the game. Tekken 2 is the first in this series, fittingly, as I believe it has one of the strongest intros to any game I've ever played, and definitely the best in the series. And to be clear, I'm talking about the PS1 version intro, not the brief, intense one with Heihachi from the arcade. As a fighting game with a large cast, how do you succinctly yet memorably introduce your audience to each of them? For the most part, the brief vignettes that make up this intro manage to do so extremely effectively, aided by the powerful, dramatic music. Each character's motivation for entering the fighting tournament must be communicated in less than an average of 3 seconds within a 2-minute video. Not an easy task. In addition to introducing the characters in cool ways, there is also a greater artistic element focusing on the duality of, and the conquest of, the self, primarily illustrated by the moments with Kazuya and his literalized internal struggle, but also with the other characters, in the forms of reflections, shadows, and doppelgangers. After a minimalist Namco Presents piece of text, the introduction begins. A descending shot of a mountain range at night. Rain falls and ominous rolling thunder is heard brewing in the distance. A hand appears, followed by the reveal of Heihachi Mishima, slowly pulling himself upwards. But even without the over-the-top backstory, the slow yet controlled climb amidst treacherous conditions, followed by the zoom into Heihachi's face, communicates determination and revenge. Next, the music begins. We start with Paul climbing onto his motorcycle and riding off. His vignette is the least substantial in terms of either theme or story significance, so it was probably a smart idea to start with him. Next, we see a shopping district. There's a few neat Easter eggs here that I hadn't noticed before taking this closer look of the intro, despite seeing it probably hundreds of times before. There's a billboard featuring Devil Kazuya, and underneath, although hard to definitively say because of the low render resolution, appears to be clips from the first game's endings and possibly gameplay footage. We switch to an aerial wide shot of the bystanders walking and shopping. Jun Kazama is introduced in the next shot, and she immediately stands out. Center framed and the only one walking in that direction, she stops and notices a presence. She turns and locks eyes with us, the audience. We get the feeling that she has an uncanny level of perception, of recognition of some kind of force or change that has happened. Now the drums and the rest of the song come in full force, and the moment is visually punctuated by an explosive stunt. Literally. Lei Wulong rolls through a window in midair before drawing his weapon. The action star and super cop. Fitting, considering the inspiration of Jackie Chan and specifically the Police Story films for Lei's character. We next see a destroyed, rustic cabin home, a shadow silhouette on the wall. A rocking chair is the centerpiece of the frame, evoking the sense of a missing elder figure. A crossfade effectively transitions the emotional scene into a low upward-facing medium shot, revealing Michelle Chang, silently absorbing the situation. A quick close-up of her fist clenching, and then her face, and then the smashing of a nearby mirror as she's overcome with anger, before immediately taking off in search of revenge. We crossfade again to the advanced cybernetic hand of Yoshimitsu. It's a cool design, and it suggests the already partially robotic Yoshimitsu has received further upgrades since the first tournament. We zoom out to reveal his cheeky grin built into his mask. Yoshimitsu is usually one of the lighter characters in the series, and that tradition continues to be established here. It also functions as a pacing downshift that is culminated in the next scene, which is Anna Williams sitting alone in a fancy club. The leg shift here may be a reference to the infamous Sharon Stone scene from Basic Instinct. Next, we have a close-up demonstrating some fine 1996 spaghetti hair. This again works in conjunction with the music as a breather from the higher intensity material of the rest of the intro, and is an example of more great management of pace. Next up is one of my personal favorite moments here. Martial Law quietly finishing up a training, or perhaps a meditation session in his dojo. Light from the setting sun gently beams through the windows. One of his outfits from Tekken 1, which is part of his overall Bruce Lee tribute, is visible, along with one of his friend Paul's red uniforms. As the camera dollies around Law and zooms towards him, a lens flare appears. He is silhouetted against the golden light outside in a fleeting, striking image, before another cross-faded medium shot. He is pulled into focus and we can see a look of intense concentration on his face. We can see his reflection in the mirror behind him. We hear a drum fill as the tension in the music returns and now peaks. An army of the Jack robots, heavily armed and sweeping an urban area with helicopter spotlights overhead. A POV shot that's ripped straight from the Terminator scans the area and then spots and zooms in on a young girl. What will happen to her? The lack of resolution for this continues to contribute to our sense of tension in this intro. The next scene is one of my other favorite vignettes in this intro. We see the character King drunkenly stumbling down an alleyway, camera shots positioned to hide his face, the guitar we hear alternating between chaos and a deliberate, melancholy solo. We can tell from his clothing and his fancy dress shoes that this is a man experiencing a rapid and extreme fall from grace. He falls to the ground. We see a strong silhouette, a recurring image and theme in this intro, emerge into the frame. A jaguar mask is tossed to the ground in front of our washed-up protagonist. The camera switches to a medium shot and pans upward, revealing Armor King, a character that is a former rival turned friend. I will admit that this scene does require some contextual knowledge of the prior game to get the intended emotional effect, but the essence of redemption and pulling yourself together with the help of a friend still manages to be conveyed even without it. The fact that the two characters look so similar plays into the concepts of reflections and other selves that is so recurring in this intro. Finally, we see the towering skyscraper of the Mishima Zaibatsu HQ amidst a similar thunderstorm to the one in the beginning of the intro. After a series of increasingly close establishing shots, we are behind Kazuya Mishima, whose new flashy velvet suit instantly communicates some of the differences made since we last saw him via the acquisition of wealth and power. He reaches out towards his reflection in the glass, briefly visible for a moment as lightning strikes. The struggle within and the search for one's true identity is Kazuya's motivation within this game, and it's all communicated without a single word of dialogue. This is followed by a rapid series of crossfades of the unlockable characters as we move through the dark and empty opulence of the building that Kazuya resides in. Again, the theme of shadows and reflections is illustrated here. Nearly all of these characters represent the motivations that will in some way lead each of our main characters into a final confrontation with Kazuya. This is followed by the striking image of Kazuya being embraced by his guardian angel, her wings fully extended, almost as if she's trying to hold on to the good that's left in him. His eyes are open, appearing red and demonic. This brief shot cements the thesis of Kazuya's internal struggle, his capacity for good at war with his proclivity for evil. The shot quickly zooms out and crossfades back into Heihachi, his father, and the man from the beginning of the intro, finally completing his climb of the mountain and out of the blackened abyss. We've come now full circle. The music resolves with a striking piano chord before a roll of thunder. Silhouetted in darkness, with wild lightning erupting behind him, the time has now come. Tekken 2. Outside of the intro, Tekken 2 largely continues to do an excellent job communicating character motivation and detail via its musical themes, stages, and endings. I'd like to elaborate on Kazuya a bit more. His stage theme does a great job of communicating the aforementioned spiritual turmoil, but the initial stage design itself does as well. Unlike the rest of the stages, there is no background visible. It's just you and Kazuya, spotlighted amidst the extravagant floor patterns. After defeating him, he is consumed by the devil within. He rises from the floor, and the environment is now, fittingly, a hall of mirrors, the final bit of symbolism of self-reflection. The music retains the melodic motif from Kazuya's previous theme, but it's now distant and fleeting as his human side has receded. Speaking of doppelgangers, here's something odd. The guy walking in the opposite direction to Jun Kazama before the zoom in the intro is actually a palette swap of Kazuya's Player 2 outfit from this game. His hair is different, but he's otherwise recognizable. This is most likely a sly bit of asset reuse, but intentionally or not, it fits into the themes of doppelgangers and possible selves nicely. These presentation elements are a large reason why Tekken 2 is still my favorite in the series. The mystical atmosphere and introspective metaphorical elements, in addition to just that classic PS1 presentation, are very compelling to me. Starting with Tekken 3, the gameplay was certainly improved, but the style of presentation and an emphasis on more relatable, metaphorical themes changed. One example is the Devil Within concept, changing from more of a symbolic element in the previous games to a literal devil gene within the Mishima bloodline in the later ones. Since Tekken 3, the series has taken more of a literal and plot-driven direction with these aspects of the game, for better or for worse. But Tekken 1, and especially Tekken 2, have that element of classic 80s martial arts films and the aforementioned symbolic and mysticism concepts that I'll always enjoy. Speaking of music, I would be remiss not to mention Paul Hertzog's scores for the 80s Jean-Claude Van Damme films Kickboxer and Bloodsport. I think they were a likely inspiration with their combination of emotive synth-lines, rock guitar, and electronic drums, not to mention the plots of the films too, of course. Have a listen to a piece of music from Kickboxer. But that's all for now. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you found this enjoyable or interesting. I'll be producing similar videos on other great game intros in the future, as well as other topics. And in the meantime, feel free to check out some of the other game analysis videos on this channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.